Yeah, because maybe I just need to take them all anyway. Let's really push myself into a world of repetitive weirdness. That's what it gets to be. It gets to be like repetitive weirdness. All the time, every time, it's out of my head. The mouth is fine, but maybe Chad should be more psychically responsible. I don't know. Insightfully responsible, but no, I don't know. It's crazy, they say. Don't you know I'm local? Not really local. The union of men, ordained by the one supply, fata. I will give you some forewarning. I may be reading from this Kabbalah book on you. So, take note of it now. And the poetry. We might hear some poetry tonight. Because everything in mortality is to the night, to the fade, and to darkness. Where we realize there's still things, even then, swarming in the particles around us. From the motes of dust to the gut flora, everything is matter that matters. I wish I would come to believe. I question whether we come here to existence to believe. Because belief implies certainty and flexibility. Maybe that's what makes our astral bodies leverage. Through the actions of the human. Hopefully the more calculated he moves, the more successful, the more it improves. But what? But what? There's certainly no question in my mind that there's angels, but angels is the metaphor that we use for it. Just like demons and further assertions of these spiritual energies. And partiality in their transfigurement may only be, there's no body, there's no physical form. But then again, in this modern dark age, there's a lot of sterilized, gentrified, superficial recalibration created by the smaller, more paranoid and skeptical percentage that actually has the wealth in the world. Who can actually do whatever they want, but fear so much. Which brings me to Trump, pretty much everything. And that was not an afterthought. I just chose to say that anyway. But, how else do you make a god raw? No, that was intentional. was fully fucking intentional. There's a hint to the inside joke that there was in my mind, which, for those of you just not going to know, God Ra is War Dog backwards. War Dog was a character that I came up with to basically be like a non-hero in a hero's journey. You know, like a creature that doesn't have humanity but submits to a greater authority, realizes it has humanity, goes way off the fucking scale, and then maybe comes back. Who knows? I mean, that's the real short version of it. But then that gets me started talking about the whole issue. It's all about a damn issue. Farkle consciousness in my head, you know, as quant as it maybe is further into quarks and other breakdowns into the binary and or puzzle. Because grammatically, and but and or are the only grammatical things that fit that space. Which again is like a holy triad, I guess, a holy trinity in the science of grammar. Well, I hate my syntax in forever, I tell you. It's goddamn Nazi Sinatra. That's who owns the fucking syntax. I don't know, like UK. You know, because we all fall apart, and it's also German Spanish for the War. So I don't do initials, and I don't spell it out the way it's supposed to be. No. I phonetically and syllabically spell it out. So we got D from German, which looks like die. And you've got K from Spanish, which is QUE, right? But what the hell is that? Die K. What? Yeah, I know. Why are you telling me to die? Okay. Because I really like this ego, and I love special K. Layers, interminable layers, variables, absolutes. But are they truths? Or are they just versions of, reductions of what gets chosen to choose? Thank you for having enjoyed this sound with me. I do appreciate the relevance of the moment as it continues to exist. And we're not just dead, dying swords on it, you know, relative to dinosaurs, like we probably. But that's what the world changes when you join my pity party. It's such a pity you won't join my party. I got puzzles the sad clown in my party. He's not actually like using the from it, he's just hanging out there. But every party needs a clown. That's right. So if you join the Brennan system, you will find yourself hang around a lot of clowns, basically. Clowns to the left of you, jokers to the right. And then there you are, But what is you if not I? Well, the tricky thing of it is that you're the me I can't be. So, you have to discover everything that I can, or at least reveal to the world. That's the problem with hoarding information. Well, information that can be universally applied. Otherwise, existence makes no fucking sense at all. It's such a recalibration of so many different continuous patterns. You're better off. No, you're better off. Unless you're better off. Oh, yeah. Buried in psychopomp. Yeah. I am a vicious twin of an element I can't begin to describe. A deeper core, and it's even through the threshold, beyond inside. It's the outside that was once in, which I know that right there makes absolutely no sense at all, but it does describe what I'm trying to get at. Which can be said more like it's the constant reciprocal production of energy that we kinetically throw out there, but we're not just still static creatures, are we? No. So that's how we carve time into all these different vectors of reality. I mean, even the air seems completely empty, but it's not. Even if you're fast enough, you feel the wind blowing by as you're moving through it. I mean, it's not quite the consistency of Jello, but it's still just a vibrating vessel, you know. Because the world contains us. We're not in the center like a nougaty goodness or hazelnut or something, you know. It's not a hollow earth necessarily, even though, who knows? I don't know that. So I won't claim to say it's official. So, this is the world we got, you know. Right now it's in a bit of a modern dark age, as I've explained, but thank God we're out of the primeval and the medieval. Of course, I don't think the medieval is very mid. I think it's very, very much like how it's spelled, medieval. It was medically atrocious, because it was medically evil. Yeah, let's put it that way, because it sounds more grotesque. More penetrating. So, yeah, to pulp it up a little bit, you know, it's where superstitions get extra creepy, especially when you're villagers with no lights, no phone, no motor home, not a single outdoor luxury. You could say that earlier parts of the civilizations were more grounded by their having to self-sustain, but no, I think they're just as validly equitized as equivalent. Sorry. It's a tricky thing about language. I had to fall in love with the letters before I could actually get into the reality of words, because it mirrors, just like people mirror each other and reflect. That's what we are. We're like mirror, mirror, frankincense, you know, myrrh, myrrh, on the wall. Why are you burning? Still burning down the wall. Well, technically it's true, but for this instance of metaphor and abstract, I've dissolved into truth, because it's all, from what I gather, Buddhists think there's two truths, which you can further break down into three truths, essentially, because the other truth is just a shade, but the same of. Actually, no, it'd be more of like a brightening. Well, anyway, it's like there's absolute truth, which is what I would consider in line with manifest destiny. The Occidental Western culture static thought that tradition is the structure, right? But no, it's conceptual. Conceptual things are shiftable, they're mutable, right? So anything can mean anything, literally. That's why everything works in phases. Reduce, reuse, recycle. All the metaphors. They just overlap each other. Like the strangest thing. But see, that's why it's unfamiliar. Some people have a repulsion to newness. They're not neophiles. Instead, it's more of an occlusion, like exclusivity, where instead of revealing the quote-unquote discoveries that they have, which it's not really discovery so much as like, this was the time, this is the now, this is the place, this is the how, right? So it comes to its natural conclusion, either way it goes. That's why we must apply mantras like no worries. So if we can't keep some kind of like positive faculty, we get bogged into and we buy into the negative equivalency, which of the two truths, there's absolute and there's relevant. Now relative, sorry. It might be relevant. It's relevant to what I'm saying. But the relative truth is the one that it's either pure, the bright, or the perverted truth, which is only perverted because it's like the sight that sees things shaded by what the sight is looking through, right? Which basically, depending on who you ask, is what story you get. And pure truth, pure relative truth, the only reason it's relative is because we're multiple faculties of consciousness existing in a similar space of time. So time being, all puns intended, I guess, I don't know. I wasn't keeping careful track of the spelling so much as the ligature of my speech as it passes through my face. Which, yeah, it seems kind of out there to say, really, especially in rhyme. In rhyme without reason just ain't in season. You gotta have reason in your rhyme in order to stay in time. You know what I'm saying? That would have slayed them in Morocco, I'm sure. But I don't know what they use as money in Morocco, so I'll try to find that out right now. And that's why I'm not in Morocco right now. So, of any place I would love to adventure to and possibly die would be Morocco, because that would be interesting. Like Ambrose Bierce going to Mexico and disappearing. And he was the guy that wrote the Devil's Dictionary, and he was a satirical author, but that was way back in the day. That was like in the period of time where I can only read about him, right? I won't ever like see a video of him. I won't know who that person is. See or mentally interacting with me just by seeing or hearing me. And that's part of the hypnotizing quality of this state of existence. And another reason why life stinks, because it's existential. Existential, folks, yes. Not eggs, as X. Existential. The stench is blown away. Obviously, it's shifting. Like with the air conditioner behind me, you know, turns on, turns off, turns on, turns on. It's all explainable. Yep. And you might ask yourself, instead of doing this, and he might say to himself, yes, that is the drink in my hand. As for time being what it is, that is now the only thing that's real. Thank you, Charles Manson. I will smoke this one. Right in front of me. And I will not care. Because there should not be a care. Again, the mantra of no worry. Or no worries. You can pluralize it if you want to. It doesn't really matter. Going back to the unfamiliar, though, the only reason we see things as foreign is because we're not familiar with them. And if you think about it in a negative, you know, scope, supposedly, I don't know, it depends on who you choose to listen through, right? I don't really do much except think about the world, inner and outer states of the world. I'm Chad, I'm Virgo, and yeah, you might know me as being Chad online. I make music, and I draw, and I'm cool. No, I'm not. Cool is like every other metaphor. It's just used to stir the hypocrisy, the hype, the hungry hypocrites whose artistic nature is turned critical in its interpretive quest to understand. See, it's that vitality of the perverted path of relative truth. Excuse me. Because the absolute truth is there. It'll be there. It's forever there. It's what is, right? The way it is. It's just, you know, depending on the witness, what do you see? Exactly. All things are one, right? But how do you explain that without sounding like a pretentious twat, you know? You really can't. You can only try to attain a certain level of lacking self-doubt to the point where you don't give a fuck. Which some people get there early, some people get there late. But eventually we learn not to give a fuck. Because what drives us is what drives us, you know, whether that's the attraction or the repulsion, it doesn't matter. In some way, it's part of the inevitable, like, magnetism, the electromagnetism, you might say, which is one of the other two constituent parts to dark energy, right? Because why would it seem so vast and empty if it weren't for all the energy potential, let's say, all the particles that haven't been yet, stardust that hasn't formed an alternate presence in the cosmos, right? Like an asteroid, or become a part of Mars or on Saturn or whatever, you know, another planetoid arthritis. I don't know. The thing is that there is a synchronicity to everything. Again, apologies. And it's not as though it's necessarily written in stone, even though it quite possibly is. You know, in the very constituent, I guess you could call those carbon footprints, I guess what we define as DNA in our own biological makeup, even as we make shift one time to another, as though it were a gift, but we're always lost in the present. You know, that's the trick of it. The novelty to get through the tradition. And that brings me to my point, is that you really do need the perverted truth with the pure relative truth in order to realize the whole spectrum of what truth has to offer, what absolute truth has to offer. Because the rights make the wrongs make the rights more palatable, sometimes more humbling,
sometimes more grotesquely unavoidable. You know, like life and death and all the tragedy in between, which many civilizations have tried to quantify from various personas to expressions of a greater layer of reality, of existence, which you could also classify as dimensions or, you know, alternate worlds, whatever it is. It's all right there. And it only takes a matter of time, and it's not a waiting game per se, but it only takes a matter of time before something evolves into something else, you know. Because as I was explaining to Paul earlier about how time is that threshold between the third and fourth dimension. Basically, it's almost like through mind is where we get to experience the layers of time, or history perhaps. Not quite certain yet, but it's lodged in the digital format, and it's the data. It's everywhere. You know it's there, but it's not anything substantial per se. That's why I believe in apparitions, phantoms, poltergeists, that kind of thing. But I've never ever met them, which is to say, the persona, the personification. It's always just a force. It's always just the way things are, and you kind of have to have an elemental respect for the forces the way they are, which also equates to God, And I think Nietzsche was just saying that God is dead, as in the conceptual God is dead. Very few of us ever really realize that the mind is a land of abstraction too. It's a doorway. It's a doorway to other realms. It's a doorway to dimensions. Transceiver, receiver, it picks up frequencies. And even in a sterile, banal world as that consequence has given us today, it's also, and that's why it also behooves us to make it better, because if we care for ourselves, then we also care for others. But it has to be that reciprocal vibration of relativity. Almost like Einstein's relativity. Maybe he was looking at time the same way. Who knows? Again, another figure I will only ever read about because they're not in this particular dimension, let's say. And in a way, you could say that the world ends for that person when I guess death occurs, But that doesn't mean that they stop moving necessarily. I know that sounds more creepy than it is, but basically that whatever we think of as being housed within this carcass keeps going, beyond us. But us, as we know it, might actually live backwards again. Who knows? Maybe that's the weird trick of it, is that the thing we consider as ego gets a chance to relive in kind of like a sitcom format, Do you want to smoke this right now? You want to smoke this right? Whatever. I don't really know what it is. I'll figure it out and bring it to you. So I haven't missed anything. I've just been kind of rehashing what we were talking about earlier. Just in that sense, like I'm talking to people, but I'm not talking to people, Yeah, that's the weird thing about the world of the recording, is it is a different dimension. There is a certain immortality there. I just hope it's not like Sartre's No Exit, where you're just in a room with people you don't know, but it's so few. The only way to I understand there's a lot of layers to that. Goddamn French people. But I do love the way they speak. They're very well spoken. when they are spoken to. Yeah, that's about the worst I've ever tried to do a French accent. Because I can get it quickly. Because, you know, cartoons were very informative for me. Later comic books, you know, books, self-help, you know, music, everything. Everything is everything. And it means everything too. That's why fascist is the only enemy you cannot see. Because once it crawls inside your head, and the next thing you know, you'll be goose stepping. So that's not cool. No one wants to goose step. That's kind of ridiculous. Just swing your leg up in front of you and just walk around like that. How long? You know? Am I a mascot? Am I some kind of pet? And those Germans back then would say Nazi, right? Yeah. Nazi Sinatra. Bang, bang. Bang, bang. Yeah. Those dudes got walked on. Didn't take a whole blood to improve that. But then, when it seems like the flapper / snake oil salesman era of civilization in this modern conjunction occurred, there was this swift removal of, like, the substances I hold in my hand, which really is just a plant that gets grown. And we all know plants are pretty essential to life as we know it. So why make it according to human law, according to United States law? It becomes then a drug or a substance to be abused, or illegal, illicit, right? Pornography of a substantial nature, a taboo, when it's not. It's been around forever. Different civilizations have seen it many different ways. And yet, this point in civilization, we're prohibited? What clues are not we getting in this current incarnation? I mean, I'll give us this. You know, we've gone wider format than tribal herd mind, right? To the point where we've got a world culture, we've got a world community in a lot of ways. And so, what ends up freaking us out is that we're now on the hive mind. We're now more insectile, but only because of the mind. Because it's not just a ROM, you know, read-only memory. It's RAM. It's random access memory. So all those variables play out in the larger natural computer. Let's say, playing out its various variables as it calculates, which is what it is. It is what it is. It is all that it is. Yes. What do you expect me to do, Goldfinger? I expect you to die, Mr. Bond. I've used that so many different times, and yet it's not confusing. It's just me doing an accent log. And even then, it's like a shitty Sean Connery. I'm not saying Sean Connery's shitty, but he's doing a Scotsman to play a Spaniard for all I know. Anyway, that's very tangential. I don't know. Am I still speaking in rhyme? I think I am. I think I am. I know I am. I know I think. But see, that's the thing of it, is that we perceive ourselves as living in a think void, where there's space to be had, but there's not. Everything is filled. Everywhere that there's already filled, you know. It's just that life energy animates, orgone energy, it animates. It's what's kind of gluing the essentials of what's here together. You could say it's just nature in its purest form. And that would be the absolute truth, according to the Buddhists. But they're all elements. They're all elements that somehow, in the way that we're trained to be logical, which is really, as far as like education systems go, it's and various other mental indoctrination, mind fuck, whatever. It's not therapy, it's the rapey of the mind. But I digress. It's not true in all cases. It's just kind of tragic to ponder even what levels it could be depraved. It could be totally perverted in the most explicit, grotesque sense, you know. But because we're not in that situation, that's why we don't know. Because the experience is what changes the direction, the pattern of human life, energy. Because we have the form, you know, the form of the human animal, and we have the mind. The mind is its own consciousness of kind of like an alien, I would say, because consciousness is difficult to calibrate, really, and to vocalize at the same time, because what's in the mind isn't what's outside of it. Because the mind lives in darkness. The mind is in our skull. We perceive light, and we live in a world of light only because we perceive it as light. And thus the shapes and brightness and everything is there. You know, we're not surprised once we adapt to it. But in that adaptation, do we lose with each following step of belief that what we perceive as correct is also the pronouncing of it as pure relative truth, right? Which is to say that one way is the correct way to look at it, and the other is the incorrect way to look at it. But if we're confused as to what correct is, see, that's where the homogeneous viewpoint, or at least the one where there's an affirmation that as beings of energy, which is pretty much what consciousness is, it's like a localized energy. I mean, you could explain it in a variety of ways, you know, between like the neural, electrical, biological circuitry inside of our organic bodies, to simply with metaphor by saying, you know, one side of my brain is God, one side of my brain is the human animal, right? Because the consciousness is homogeneous, like I say. So we're all one thing. Consciousness is just broken down because of the animals it is within, which, again, the subjective shapes the objective. It shapes the object. So what we call history is us selectively carving out pieces of what we depict as posthumous, like memory supply, you know, in case we forget where we were from or anything like that, which is where all our whacked out traditions and human law comes from, which is why we need lawyers, because they see the loopholes, or they spend their whole fucking lives like doctors who get doctored and adulterated and sold out to pharma, techie, cure nothing. Anyway, pursuit of money, you know, ivory tower, that kind of bullshit. But it's just that it's bullshit. The names mean nothing except to the name users, bringers, givers, you know, words. And I could go on and on like that forever. But I don't have forever. So call these tokens. Call these series of posthumous memory supplies, except in the audio-visual format, because that's this level. That's the peak of this level. Everything else is just kind of like showmanship at this point. Either it's there or it's not. You know, that's the thing about an optical illusion, is that your eyes may be playing tricks on you, or some other illusory part of it, you know, like a magic trick or something, you know, a stage trick, prestidigitation, right? But it's still digitized. It's to the point where it's a pattern. It's this is how it works, this is how it doesn't, this is how it works, this is how it doesn't, right? So, in that sense, we are still learning tools, learning beings, vessels of time machine proportion. But it doesn't take a fucking H.G. Wells to go back in time or to be able to perceive the future. Not at all. The strange thing is that the passenger inside of our heads, the consciousness, right, it stays the same from childhood on up. What is an adult? Honestly, it's not like even if we are in the insectile hive mind state still, it doesn't mean that we still would have that life as though we're shoot to kill. By now we just might be drifting along in an alternate world where that's cool, that's the way it is, which is true. But also with the shifting, the evolution, worlds change and become different. Yep, totally. Obstacles turn into pursuits for those that choose. The only freedom we have. Sometimes the only freedom we abuse is the freedom of choice. Yeah. That's what human law tries to constrict, is what we have the societal okay to believe in, and what, yeah, it's trickery nonetheless. I'm not saying I have any real great idea for how to improve, but the next level to this whole herd hive mind thing is the social mind, or whatever term comes up best, But basically we're all on the same page emotionally, which is the only conflicting thing. That's why we're always so conflicted with each other, because that's usually the one place that the patterns run astray in the whole wave phase entanglement of terms of what I choose to use this way. Because the names, again, are not so much as the concepts that they convey. Because communication is not about argument and debate unless those rules are defined ahead of time to all people involved, right? But otherwise, it's a useless exercise. And who needs that much exercise of their demons, really? I could call a fucking Catholic priest and, probably get a better exorcism than the exercises that laboriously tell us that we can't exist this way. But see, that's why there's the differentiation, so that there's an acceptable, at least vague concept, vague generalization. Or else there wouldn't be a left-hand, right-hand path. There wouldn't be I guess in some shape or form, there wouldn't be a Christianity to a Satanism, right? Even though they're still one and the same. Ha ha ha. It's only the definitions, the concepts that weigh on us. And see, that's the thing about the mind space. The mind space is like I said, a think void. But when a bunch of different thoughts and patterns coalesce to make a concept more concrete, especially in the real world, right? That's when it can, in a lot of ways, is what I would refer to as a think tank, because it becomes more like a tank. Like tanks as we know them, right? Because that's the modern shade on it. It's relative truth, but through the lens that's a little bit cloudier than, say, maybe it was way back when, but, that's also simple for a reason. There was no computers. There was no extra powerful freaking laser beams on those iPhones, you know what I mean? It's all trickery, because there are no cures that don't kill. Because it's all this reverse psychology, I think. That's why I come off as really strongly oppositional, I think. Because I'm not Catholic, even if deacon is what I go by. Because the way I'm referring it to meaning in my mind, or interpreting it, which is a far easier way to say it, but I guess I was avoiding that. But we're all interpreters, we're all artists. The only thing is, instead of going artistically, we choose to go critically, which is true. We do need to have a certain amount of awareness and judgmental acuity, but at the same time, because we live in a land of superficiality and suppression via sheltering and patterns of impermissible paranoia, suspicion. What ends up happening is we don't get a clarification of what certain terms mean experientially. We can't take advice. We can't listen to others as easily because we're so drawn away from what we believe is nature. But we don't live in that sense of nature anymore. That's why people idealize, and yet at the same time make nostalgic what happened in the past as being a good time. It just meant you knew what you had to do and you did it. You got it done. There was no distraction, as distracting as they are from some to many now, because I think everybody's got ADD, all this high definition stuff in quality, but at the same time distractingly high profile, hi-fi, high fidelity. Whereas I prefer lo-fi, local fidelity. I don't know. I like listening to bands outside my range of being right next to me. But at the same time, I like growing through the ideas that to me get conveyed, the frequencies I pick up on, as though it's always a good radio station being played. I don't know. I know I'm rhyming. I know I'm flipping the script and tripping out on stuff like that. And it's not tripping out. Honestly, it's the harmony created between the polarizations. Like my mind and my body are in collusion, which might sound like a horribly trumped up charge to use, but no, I'm not conspiracying with Russia, even though I am of Russian descendancy. I think up to my grandfather was Russian, so there you go. That's how many dimensions of generation I've gone through to get here. I guess you could say, I know I said it. I said it already once. I don't think we'll say it again, but it might happen, it might come up again. Anyway, because of that, I'm not rushing to any conclusions, nor am I playing Russian roulette. Because life is Russian roulette enough, right? Except I already know that I'm going to get, not necessarily bullet in the head, even though that's a really good rage against machine song, I must add. Again, my frequencies are on right. Chat is now on right. Proceed with caution. Yeah, so I'm usually like a very cautious, and by cautious I mean like cautiously pausing. Well, actually, yeah. And see, it doesn't work. You spell a word out one way, and you pronounce it, and it comes out a completely different way. It's the sounds that this thing makes, as far as like communications and mimicry and the elusive illusions that consensus reality seems to be. Chunks of it make sense to me, but chunks as in like glacier floating in the ocean, like not to. Okay, yeah, to make the Titanic reference, that has been like killed with, fucking chainsaw. It's like the ship running into it is inevitable. It's like, oh God, lesson learned. I don't even need to learn it in this life. Shit, I'm not on a boat. I don't even know how to swim. But I don't mind. I don't have any worries. I don't have any pretentious thinking, oh, I need to learn how to swim right now. No, I don't fucking care. I'm on land. I mean, if I'm thrown on a boat for any reason, I'll know it's time for action, It's like it's not, what's going on? I'm just a worm in the sun. Nope, can't be ignorant forever, and yet be so loyal. Loyal to what? You can be loyal to yourself if you want to survive. At the same time, to learn how to make a tribe. So maybe that's an elementary lesson we learn in the herd mind. Maybe that's also part of the reptile function too, because birds seem to be really good at that. Birds are the shit at that. Because how do they get from like north to south to hibernate or whatever if they didn't have that inner calibration? You know, celebrate the birds, come on. You know what I'm saying? I don't even know what I'm saying. How would you know what I'm saying? I just keep saying it. Because I'm a super saiyan. That's what I am. I'm a super saiyan. Because I'm saying what I want to. Which is difficult to do sometimes. I must admit that there are certain exclusions that occur because of the techniques, the verbs, the watery feelings that emit from the human being that make us not say anything sometimes, you know, because silence is golden, and the Midas touch means that you've been sold into metal machines, and yep, there's another cog and gear in the machine, just cog lost. Not really trying to do anything. See, and we realize this on an individual level, but at the same time, human law says, no, we have to be conscious of every moral and every equitative ethic that makes us, you know, like lawful. But I digress and obsess and express myself by saying that it depresses me when I think about our political system and how it is the way it is. It just is. It is. Everything is everything. But at the same time, we know it's totally got to be bound to change, or else, you know, we're just as apt to call Trump a fucking dictator. But you know, I'm just tooting my own horn. I'm not political at all. Or as I delicately like to refer to them as politics and leeches in this gonzo universe, because it does feel like some kind of badass HST3K something is in function as God in this particular level. Because it is like Hunter S. Thompson, I guess the Doctor. The Doctor's in right now because he's gone from this level of existence. And so the madness has to carry on in other vessels, not just his own. Because his own image is as immortal as Bela Lugosi, as any other flame from the wick. It's just, some people burn the wick, which is a candle, you know, for those of you not familiar with what candles are. Candle burns at both ends sometimes. That might be what you would call a workaholic, works themselves to death, but again, I mentioned, how does it work if you love what you do? And that's kind of like one of the multitude of problems that we've got going on. And that's because it's a social problem. It's a social issue. And if we compartmentalize and taboo all our social issues, what do we have to even rule over? Because we're social creatures, yet we have no socialism. Why? Because it's a political theory. It's a political mindset, recalibration, a belief. And a belief will get you wet, son. Yes. Oh, but I in my own uniquely isolated view on nothing but the action I imagine to be real, except what I see and feel to be, you know, speculative. I do, in a sense, trust everybody at their word, but in that immediacy, in that sense that they are there too. And so on that automatic level, you don't know what a person sees other than how you view it, right? So it's automatically the beginning of confusion, because if you can't even see how another person sees you, then how do you know you're even conveying yeah, it's total buggery. And see, that's where I get into the term optimal delusion. That word, kids, optimal delusion, not optical illusion, is the old way of saying the opposite of things. I guess, I don't know. It's very weird in the abstract, because essentially, in my variable opinion of it, that's what we're changing into in a lot of ways. We're changing into that dimension of data, and we're trying to change it into a world that really is pure and beautiful, and all those senses of it that we idealize and give it in senses of perfection and things that are not artifacts, that are not yet here, or here yet. You can say it in a multitude of ways. And see, that's the thing about language. Variables. They depict and they show us those increments. They may use other jargon to explain themselves, which is true. But that's still reading me. So the law of it, the general law. See, yeah, and there's only one more note to go after law, right? And then because law is the traditional element telling us we can't go any further. Ha ha ha. Fuck them and their law. Yeah, that was a little bit tangential. For those folks in the audience, which I don't even know if this will be seen ever. Probably will, but probably won't. Probably will, probably won't. Anyway, yeah, it's Schrodinger's cat. I'm putting a cat in the box. I'm letting it, basically live or die. I won't know. Because I'm God. At this point, I'm God. No, I'm not. I'm just a dog. But more like Iggy Pop and the Stooges dog. I want to be your dog. I've got a collar. Really? I'm a dog's dog. I hate dogs, but I'm a dog's dog. Whatever that means. Take it as you will. Sometimes I disembark on the information relation machine train, it seems. Yeah. Because I'm just as riddled with opinion as anybody else. And my bias tells me that this looks this way. But see, that's where I'm artistically very much like compare contrast. I'm not just going to say, hey, I don't know what this is. You see, that's the fine line between the sanity we call sanity and the dimension of madness. Is fucking freaking out, man. Because that's the biggest hurdle to get over in relating to others. Is always freaking out. Because it doesn't matter how long you're communicating with a person. If they start freaking out, you know there's something wrong. There's got to be something a little bit askew with your approach, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm as or more so deluded and mad as the things I'm talking about. Who knows? Maybe this is all just a dream, which it is more than it seems. A dream within a dream. But do we realize that the dreamer is dreaming, or do we just keep on dreaming as though we were never here to begin with? I don't know. But see, that's the weird thing about quanta. Quanta dimension, quantified, encapsulated. Every moment, every particle is a dimension. That makes it kind of freaky because it's like drops of rain or something. Yeah, I don't want that storm hitting me on the head. Because next thing you know, all my head, it's drifting into other dimensions. Other dimensions. Which sometimes I think could be translated as dimension. Yeah.